Ooh,
You go.
much better.
Much
That's
better.
That's
it.
that's the whole thing now.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank
yeah.
you.
Okay.
Okay, now you can start from the top.
All right. Rewind. All right. So I'll go back to here. So if you hold Control and click the load and start, it pops up this menu. And so this is where you can put the number of runs that you want. And it will just, again, repeat everything that's in the G code. And as I was saying, I'm going to add another dialog here where you can inject commands in between each of them. For the Rose engine, if you're recording G code there, that's probably not too important. You can record any of the motions that you want in that. But if you are doing something where you want to do it 4 times and around, the rim of a bowl or something, you might want to just be able to inject a 90-degree rotation at the end of the G code. And so that would now move you to the next position before it started up again. So that would be the idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. When if you put in 20 runs, is it going to do 20 things without stopping?
Yes, it'll do all 20 without stopping.
Yeah, so you can't actually change the offset and move it over between runs.
That's right. So you would want to, for example, if you're doing something, if you knew you would know what your offset is, and if you're like recording in the G code in the Rose Engine plugin, you would just do that rotation when you were recording and then stop the recording of the G code. And so
I'm
that would
already
actually make that move happen before it started the next run.
That would work. I'm already feeling nervous about knowing exactly what's in the recording. Uh,
So okay, well, I mean, we can talk about that. I'll talk about that plug in a minute. Maybe we can address that there. But basically, it's any commands that get sent once you hit the record button till when you hit write G code, everything is recorded.
So this would be useful if you wanted to do multiple passes to get to a set depth.
Multiple. It could be for set depth, it might be a little bit harder. Let me show you what I've used this for. In this case, oh well, no, you're not gonna be able to see that. That's a little bit blown out. All right, let me try this first. There you go.
Good.
So in this case, this is I just a circle, and I've used the offset. So in made the circle off, and then just told it to do it 20 times.
Okay, so it's 20 circles
20
set
circles. Yep.
set around the perimeter there. Gotcha.
Yep.
And you
And
inserted a an index between each run.
that's right.
So you inserted that index at the last thing you did for your recording and then
Exactly.
stopped recording and then started saying, run this G code.
Right. And actually, I think I I did it this 20 times because I just did the first one on a separate piece and then I switched it out and then I did it 20. But of course, if I was starting from the original, I would just have run it 19 times.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is the idea behind being able to do that.
Can you
And
edit
You,
the
there are,
you,
recorded code?
what was that?
Can you edit the recorded code?
Uh yes, but you'd have to it would all be manual editing. So you'd have to download the file, open it up in an editor and change whatever it is that you wanted to change
As G code.
as G code.
as
I can
she,
show you. Here's an example of what this a record that's actually this recording that I did here. So one of the things, and I mentioned, well, actually, this is probably not a bad idea to. Oh, I got to open up the right screen. Um, One of the things, as I mentioned, that Octoprint LatheEngraver plugin does is it'll be able to recognize any specific commands that we give it. And this start cap command here is to start capturing the position. So one of the issues you have if you record, if you go back to absolute positions versus relative positions, you'd actually end up, or wait, did I say that right? If you go to absolute positions, you'd always be moving back to the same spot. So if you said go back to zero at a point, you would go back to the actual zero. This allows you to actually capture whatever the starting position is, the start capture. It will say that that is now your starting position. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically it allows you to use relative positioning as opposed to absolute positioning in the recordings themselves.
Mhm.
So, and then these are just, these are making the circle. So these are all the commands that make the circle. And then this is the same kind of thing where this tells it that start capture, you're going to go to whatever the X position was that you started at the capture and whatever the Z position was that you started at the capture. So that's how it knows to go back to that relative spot.
Going back to my early Excel days and trying to learn Excel macros and the VBA of that account, recording the macro was the best way to learn that language in the context of Excel. So in the context of the Octoprint Rose engine, I see the possibilities here.
Yeah, you could certainly do some manual editing. It's all up to the user. That's what I always like to say.
So
So if I feed that G code to Claude Code, will it give me a summary of what the G code is doing?
I have no idea. It probably will,
That's
but
sure going to be useful when there's a bunch of G code lying around.
it wouldn't know what the special commands are. So that start cap, it's not going to know what that does because its training model is almost certainly going to be just Gerbil G code or standard G code. And these are commands that I add specifically to be using with the LatheEngraver.
So if it's AI induced, tell it to ignore certain code.
Yeah, you could do that. Or, anything that's not standard. But that decreases the utility of, being able to interpret the G code. So
it looks like you might be able to use this to, if you were doing like a Rose engine design on the top of the lid, that you wanted it to pump, like, let me get the right terminology, so pump going into the Z axis.
Yeah.
So you could actually turn around and say, I want my entire depth to be 5 millimeters after you've already you start off the piece, let it sneak into it, and then slowly cut until you made the number of passes to get you to the 5 millimeters.
Yeah, you could do that. Yep.
That's what I was referring to, sneaking up on a set depth.
Right. Yep, you could certainly do that.
It will back off the way it does now and accept the injections that it recorded?
Yes, it will record all the injections. And so since we're on this topic, let me just go ahead and bring up the settings for that so you can see where these are. So Rose engine here. It's this one right here. So return to relative start position during recording. So this uses markers to return to relative, not absolute positioning. So if you were doing that, Rob, for example, you do your one pass and you'd go in a certain amount that you were cutting, and if you had that for the relative positioning, um, I have to think about that. I'd actually have to maybe do it. You'd maybe say move in that 0.1 millimeters in the Z, move that more negative while you're recording, and then every time you ran that, it would move in that amount every single time.
And since it made a 360 around, it should fall right back into the same pattern.
Yeah, it should.
Does it always retract the cutter at the end of the recording?
Only if you tell it to. So that comes in the plugin itself here. So when you click stop, the behavior for stop is dictated in the settings. I guess I should have just stayed in settings. You can, where's this? Auto reset on stop. So auto reset will move to wherever you started. When you press start, it'll move to that position.
In what order?
It depends on that. That is another option here. You have the reset priority. So none in this case will impact, so that if you are, let's say, pumping, it will always move Z back first. Wait, do I have that right? Yeah, pumping would move Z back first. Rocking will always move X back first, unless you tell it to do something different. And you can select in this reset priority if to do rocking or pumping first.
Excellent, because I've wiped out a piece by it. rotating the y-axis, the rotation, and wiped out the piece I had just did.
I've done that as well. That's why that feature's there. The other thing is that, I thought this auto reset would always be a good thing to have, but there are some cases where you don't want it. You want to just turn that off, stop, move back 5 millimeters, and then hit the reset button
That's
so
kind
that
of what I
you're
started
definitely off
doing.
the piece.
I would just stop it where it was and then take manual control of it and drive it back away.
Yeah. Yep. That's what that'll do. Okay. Let's see. Close that. Back to the controls. One of the things, and again, I've mentioned this a few times before, and you might have noticed a change in behavior recently, which I fixed, but I fixed on here. But this green box now, you might have noticed that when you actually give a movement, so if I'm moving X in this case, that a black box appears around this. Has anybody seen that? No, maybe not. Anyway, I've changed that behavior for how it focuses in within this window to give you keyboard controls. And there's a reason for that, and I'll show you that later because there's another plugin that might be of interest to people. And I needed to change how it got keyboard focus in order to make that plugin work. Let's see. Scanning plugin has had an update. All this looks the same. It's just in the behavior of this. So Justin Ahrens, who's been doing quite a lot with his LatheEngraver recently, mostly with Rose Engine stuff, had done a scan, and he had done what I describe as an uphill scan. But he was using ovality scans on that. And this was again a positional reset thing. So now it just drove his probe straight into the piece because the ending position was at a uh, was at a larger Z value than the ending position was a higher Z value than the starting position. So it tried to move back to the starting Z position first. So that's all been fixed. So any direction that you're actually probing should work fine now. Some other things. Back to Rose Engine here. We've mentioned some of these. Um, One of the things a lot of this stuff is just little quality of life things. So there was a problem that if you pushed start with no type of rosette loaded, it led to an error state and it wouldn't let you do anything until you reloaded the page. So that's been fixed. There was an issue with writing in the geometric chuck if you did the 2G code. So you wrote that out as a XY G code file. There's a problem there that's been fixed. And the other thing that we have now is that if you do that's not a very good one. That's not a very good one either. It doesn't really matter. If you do save the geometric chucks, so again, you have a list, you can save those and recall geometric chucks. Saving that now automatically refreshes that list. So now that one that I just saved is there. So you don't have to refresh the page to have that show up again. Um, I think probably the biggest change is you'll notice that there's actually more buttons over here, and I probably need to clean these up just a little bit. But
Nice.
you have the ability now to set these values directly. So if you right click on any of these, it'll pop up this dialog window, and you don't want to do 0.5, you want to do 0.48. You just put that in there, and now that's your 0.48 button.
Ooh.
And so you can really more easily adjust if you're making sort of, constant changes in either angle or distance that you're making.
On that list you had on the geotuck, can you edit the names?
I don't have name editing yet. Right now it's entirely just by date. That's something that I've considered doing. Right now, what you could do is you could do that manually. So if you go to, where do I save those? I don't remember where I save those. Those are saved in rosettes. Yeah. Should be close to the top. It's a file that's called save geos here, JSON. You could download this file, overwrite it. And I think some people have done this already. You could go in and just edit that, and that would give you a name for it. Um, I'll look into making the names editable. Probably just do like a right click and then lets you put in a new name for it. Let me write that down so I don't forget.
Hey, Paul, this is Keith.
Yeah,
When you're editing those movement buttons, is that on all the screens or just the Rose Engine screen?
that's just the Rose Engine screen.
Okay.
And it's theoretically I could do it for the normal control panel as well, but things get a little bit more complicated there. Um, in part because when you're doing something like popping out the controls, if you want to have this in another window, getting the same values they would change between this and this. I don't know if that's necessarily bad, but that could get confusing because you can use the keyboard controls, right? The number buttons will select. If you use one, well, I got to be in focus here. Oh, one doesn't do anything. Why is that? Huh. I thought one did that. So 2 is 0.1, 3 is 1, 4 is 5, 5 is 10. So I'm just using the number buttons on the keypad, so you can easily change those. And if I had those selectable, it might lead to problems when you're thinking you're moving this much and you wanted to be moving a different amount. Let's see. Set known movement distances. From conversations last month. And I have not done anything more with this, to be honest, but for the curvilinear here, I've added it was automatically reciprocating last month, if you recall that. So it would just go back and forth. Um, and now that reciprocation is a checkbox. So if you have that off, it's going to do one pass of whatever SVG file is that you select, and then it would stop when it got to the end, so that you could reset position and make sure that you're cutting in whatever direction it is that you want to be cutting in with that. At this point, it's not much smarter than that. There is an additional change which I have on here, but I have not pushed yet, and that is when you're loading a rosette. And I don't think I have any examples where it's not going to work now. But if you, like, for example, open up this Fireflower rosette, it's going to be off center. And this was my naive thought that if I was taking the center of the bounding box of the rosette, that I would be at the center of the design, and that's not the case. So I've now am calculating the center, actually just calculating a centroid for all of the points around this. So it gets a much more accurate center for the rosettes. And I'll be pushing that change once I find another thing to go along with it. I don't want to keep like making updates for small things, even though that's kind of an important one. Um, yeah. So any questions on those things? I think those are all the main plugin changes that I've made.
Not a question, but deep appreciation for the tracking the injection of distance as you're moving a bit deeper into the piece. That is, every time I use that, I'm just grateful all over again to have it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I thought that was going to be pretty useful, because when you want to repeat things, or you're changing it up, you're moving over a little bit and you want to do the same operation again, it's nice to know actually how far you went.
Yeah, I was making marks. I mean, I'm keeping a log on the side. I'm making marks to track stepping in. Always missed one.
Uh-huh.
So this is
All right,
great.
good. I'm glad that that's a useful feature. One of the things that I don't know if this bothers people or annoys them in any way like it sometimes does me. But there's a lot of blank space on here. So Octoprint is kind of set up to be in the middle of the window, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. And so you're always kind of working in one of these tabs at a time. And I think that's good for organization a lot of times, but there might be people who, are never going to use Rose Engine plugin and are only going to use, the control tab and the profiler or something. And there's no need to be actually switching between those. So Octoprint, one of the available plugins, so I'll go to Plugin Manager here and get more, and you got to put in your password, is this Consolidated Tabs plugin. And I'll show you how this works. And again, this was the reason for the change for making how the keyboard focus worked. And I should say if I can remember how to set it up because it's been a while since I did it. Okay. I think it restarted. All right, here it is. So this will now open, you'll have a new tab up here called LatheEngraver. And what you can do is now use this editing button up here. So it kind of guides you through it a little bit. So you can click this editing button and it tells you that if you click a plus sign, it will add that tab to the consolidated tabs. And then you can start moving these around. So you can put them wherever you want them and you can resize them. Now the resizing is always a little dubious because of I don't know how to do HTML properly. But for example, I'll click this control here and I'm going to need to resize this a little bit to get everything where I want it. Oh, there's one other thing that I should actually do. Sorry. I'm going to exit this. I think I can. Oops. Did you just lose my window?
Nope, we still got you.
Okay. I'm going to go to the settings here. One other thing that we want to do is to go to the settings for this consolidated tabs and use full browser width.
Ooh.
So now we've got more real estate to work with. And so we click this. We can add the control panel here, say, and I'm using a trackpad, so I can't. Where's the handle? I know, I'll just add another one. Let's say we want to add profiler to this. Okay, where'd it go? All right, well, I don't know why it's not doing what I'm expecting it to do. Oh, here we go, because I moved over. We need to be in LatheEngraver. Sorry, I clicked on that instead of where I needed it to be. So you can see what effectively what this is doing is that it's just putting multiple tabs into the single window. And so I can put scanning here. And so you can interact with all of these individually at this point. I probably want, let's see if I can figure out how to grab this and move it. There we go. And then you click save. And now you go to just this LatheEngraver tab and we have all of these things in here. And we have keyboard focus here. That's the change that I made. And you can, select your rosettes and have them in this window. So, I mean, I probably won't be using this full time. But it's something that if you want to use all of the real estate and you're using, you're just using this here and you're maybe using one other thing, it might make sense to have multiple tabs on one screen at a time.
Are we able to do multiple layout saves, or is it just one and go?
That's a good question. I don't actually know. I'm not sure what happens when you do this. Um,
Because I can definitely see having the control tab error and another window. But if I'm working on something else, I want the control tab and the other I'm working on.
yeah, I don't know if you can do that or not. My feeling is that you can't, but let me check the settings. That would be the place that would we would be able to find that. Why is this small? I don't see anything that would immediately suggest that you can do that unless it's this floating panels, and I'm not sure what that does. Well, you can experiment and find out. You can always turn this off. So if you go to Plugin Manager here, we're looking for consolidated tabs. You can disable the plugin, and then you have to restart, and it'll go back to the default layout.
Now I need a bigger monitor.
2 or 3 of them. Why not?
That's what I have at my workstation here in my office, but down in my shop, I've got a laptop.
Oh no, 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 no. You've got your priorities backwards.
Yeah. Shop should have all the good stuff.
I just got to
Except
move my LatheEngraver up to my office and see what my wife says.
she might not like the dust. Um, I think as far as software things go, that is all of the updated changes that I've made so far. We've had some feature requests. I'm going to see when I can get to those. Uh, middle of May is when I'm kind of done with everything work-wise, so I'll be able to spend a little bit more time on that again. Um, we have done some hardware things. So we talked about a tailstock last month. Ed showed us his little mini tailstock, so I went ahead and ordered one, and I've made one that I've only really used it once, but it worked just fine. All I've done is I've taken another piece of this 80/40 extrusion, cut it down to the appropriate size with having this 1/4 inch interface plate. And this is bolted onto the extrusion itself. And then I just tapped a couple of holes in that. And so this can effectively sit basically anywhere to be able to function as a tailstock. The only thing that I did find was that it's a little bit of a pain working with where to put it relative to the Z-axis. So I think when I did it, what did I do with it? I did the spirals on a spatula handle here. And so I had to actually, because it was a relatively long thing that I was working on, I had to actually put it on this side of it when I was working. So you have to kind of figure out where it's going to have to go relative to the piece that you're working on.
I heard the key phrase, I ordered one. Those of us with limited mechanical engineering skills, um, I'd like just to have one and not have to create it.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit more complicated. Um, it's, it's not well, there have not been that many lathe engravers actually sold yet. So the maximum number of these that would have to get made is 20 or around that number at this point. And the cost to do that would be way more than what I would want to do. So it's not it's not really a complicated process to put together. Because really,
Mechanical engineering skills. There is the key word. I can cut wood. I have almost no
okay.
experience cutting metal.
Well, it's I would say that you could take it to probably any machine shop and say, I want to put this thing on top of this thing,
And
and have it
this thing
be this
comes
height.
with drawings.
Um, it would be quite easy to make a drawing for you to show how that would go.
Great. Yeah, with a drawing, yes. I could find a shop, a machine shop. But walking in and saying, hey, waving this thing around, I want this thing to do that thing, they'll just tell me to go away.
Yeah, well,
Actually, there's only drilling, so I think all you need to do is make a paper template and drill a hole and put the screws in.
yeah, for this, the only other thing that you have to do is you have to cut the extrusion down to size. That's I mean, depending on and for with the platform, that will should effectively be the same size for everybody.
Well, with that
So
an aluminum extrusion, we should be able to cut that with our woodworking tools.
you can yeah, I just cut this with a whatchamacallit.
Chop saw.
Yeah. Yeah, a chop saw, that thing.
I do not own a chop saw.
Now, who's got the
Well,
wrong
how do you
priorities?
fasten it to the base?
Fastening it to the base is I'm using one of these four position 90-degree brackets. And
And
so
that's it?
yeah, I initially had it. What did I use before? I used something else before. I actually think maybe the little L bracket would be better than this one, or have one larger bracket on one side and another bracket on the other side. Um, the problem that I ran into was that when you want to adjust the position, it becomes harder to do that. So I wanted to keep having the slide in T-nuts in here so that
Mm,
I could have it, loosen it up and move it forward and back wherever I needed it. Or I could easily just take it off and then put it away, and I would still have the T-nuts here and I wouldn't have to slide anything out. So having it, oh, actually, that's what I did. That was the first thing that I did, is I used these 90-degree brackets like this.
mm.
And I went on the side, and that's why I didn't like that, is because I had to reach over on to the back side. You can imagine here, or maybe I can switch to my other
Yeah,
camera.
that would have been my first thought too, to do that.
Yeah, it gives you a lot more rigidity that way.
The top
Yeah,
portion,
but
how much is off the shelf and how much is custom machine?
uh, there's four holes drilled. That's the machining. So I mean, it's a piece of quarter-inch aluminum that I just had sitting around, but
The
Oh, and like
actual
we
thread,
all have that sitting around, quarter-inch
the
aluminum. Hmm.
I
I
mean,
so
think you can get those on AliExpress as well.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, what's to say
Just need to
you
get
take a
6
piece
of
of
them.
hard maple and do the same thing?
I'll bet it would work just fine for how much, this is not going to be doing a lot.
Hmm.
It's basically just to keep things aligned, right?
Right.
Yeah, but it was a pain to work with it down here. So I thought I'm gonna go onto the top just to make it easier to move around, and I didn't have to reach on the backside to tighten things up.
Let me see.
I'm sure we'll
You're not
get
worried about
many
it.
variations of it now.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and I would love to see other variations, and other people will probably use this more than I will, or their variations more than I will, and you can tell me what works best. And when everybody's buying lathe engravers, and this is an add-on we can have, then we can figure out what the best
The
version
top
is.
at the very top tube is a Morse tube, number two Morse taper tube with a threading in it somehow.
This thing, is that what you're
Yes,
saying? This is not
yes.
Morse taper 2. I have no idea what this is. This is just a little bearing. This thing is like $20 off Amazon. And I think Ed, you had one, right? And I just looked at one that looked similar to yours, and I bought that.
So
Um,
that is just a live center that you've mounted onto a bracket.
yes,
Yeah.
that's all it is. I think
Yeah,
they call it a mini live center or something on Amazon.
and there's a couple of it's threaded, two rods threaded into each other, basically, so it gives you a little bit of extension on it.
And it's just clamped in, so you can adjust position with the clamp as well. You loosen up the clamp, you can slide it in and out, as well as then have right? Positional, your rotational extension. I mean, it worked when I used it. The other new thing that I have that I've made now, this is my extra control board that I have. You'll notice that I've gotten rid of the whatever the Duo Lock stuff is from DuPont that I was using to connect these, and now I have a 3D printed piece here that's actually attaching the case here to the power supply. Much more rigid, a lot nicer. The files for that are on the LatheEngraver repository in the print. I think it's called printed section, and it kind of clips on at the mounting spots here, and then two M4s hold it in here, and then the mounting holes going in are actually the four. This is an old version. The four mounting holes that actually hold the board into the case. You just use slightly longer M3s, and then those will go into this to hold everything in place. I think you need M8, M3 by 8s instead of M3 by 6s in order to get it to mount up. But I think that's a pretty good improvement, actually, because otherwise this thing was always kind of flopping around and moving on me whenever I'd move it around. And those are hardware things.
Okay, while we're on hardware, Paul,
Yeah.
so some of the comments on Discord this last month have been about, knobs to jog the lathe engraver, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We saw a couple of pictures of them, but I didn't understand, what it is that makes that work, how to connect it.
Those are That's a good question because the guy that did that, he's using a different board. So it would be possible to do that, to have like um, a rotational control like that. I don't think it's necessary personally, because everything that you're going to be doing with the lathe engraver, you're going to have to be at the computer at some point anyway,
Mhm.
and you have full keyboard controls. So as long as you have your laptop there, that's basically doing the exact same functions as far as I'm concerned. And if once you know the keyboard shortcuts, which are of course just the arrow keys. So for you know,
But they also had, stop and start on them too.
oh yeah, so that is our additional things. The the hold and the feed start are two buttons that if you get a couple of just generic buttons that you can wire up in order to do that. And that the positions to wire those are on that diagram. It's this one.
Yeah,
It's
the
on
board layout. Yep.
yeah, on in that map.
And you don't have to debounce the switches or anything.
You don't, they're already debounced. So yeah, this thing here. Um, they're already debounced in the firmware. And you can use either normally open or normally closed, but I think they're set up as normally open by default, and you have to adjust a setting if you want to use normally closed switches. But that is useful. So, if I'm running something, I don't know what this will actually do. Right, if it's running some G code here, and I've got my control boards underneath here. If I click the run hold, it's just, it'll stop what it's doing, and I can mess around with whatever I need to do, and then I can do feed start, and it'll start again.
So do the
Yeah,
buttons actually stop the G code instantly, or does it still have to run out, kind of like when you push the button on the stop button on the screen?
It stops the controller from actually executing any more commands, is what it does. So whatever G code commands are already in the buffer, they're already there, but it won't actually send any more commands to the motors as soon as you hit the button.
So it'll empty the buffer then.
It does not empty the buffer. The buffer stays full.
And
So
stays
instead of
up and
stopping,
stays running
Yeah, it stays running. So
until the buffer's
basically,
empty.
if you see something that you need to change, I mean, and I might like, if I'm running this and I'm like, oh, I gotta stop that because I'm off just a little bit and I want to do some manual correction, I could like come in and just chunk the axis by hand, a millimeter, and then okay, I'll start again. Or I use it as my e-stop, to be honest. If something's going wrong, I'll do a feed hold or I'll stop the feed, and then you can just cancel the print. And it'll
From the feed.
automatically, now it clears the buffer. So you can start the next print immediately.
so we don't get the delay like we would from hitting the pause button on the screen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is it
Excellent.
possible to add an e-stop button on each of the pages?
You can, I have not enabled e-stop by default, but you can put an e-stop on there. Yeah.
Just for everybody's information, I threw in a mini tailstock off Amazon into the chat.
Thank you. I've copied it.
And I would like to, those buttons, it'd be nice if I could have that be a standard thing, but it's the effort it takes to like wire up the buttons was more than LDO Motors wasn't going to do that for me. And so that was something that I didn't want to have to spend the time to do as for every single one. So I felt that I put the holes in the board so that if you wanted to put half-inch buttons there's two spots. You might have noticed there's like a gray blanking plate going over those holes. That's where I put the buttons. And they're at a spot there where it makes it relatively easy to put a couple of wires in to make those work.
Actually, I
You
was
don't do it
thinking
on
just,
a remote, huh?
Or yeah, a remote's fine too. Yeah.
I was thinking of just adding a button on each page in the UI that's larger.
Oh, like you're saying add a button here as an e-stop button.
Right.
Yeah, let me think about that.
Wouldn't that still have to empty the what's in the buffer?
Well, that would be ideal.
Yeah, so I think you can send an M999 and it will function like that. But I actually have to check that. I'm not sure because I think it kind of checks to see if you have a emergency stop anywhere within the buffer. And if you do, then it'll empty buffer and stop. I think that's how it operates, but I have to check. I'll write that down too.
Well, if it was going to do that, you could do it from the buttons as well.
From the physical buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it has the Gribblehau firmware has specific inputs to be able to do, feed hold, to do restart, e-stop. It has motor stalling. So if you have a motor that will report out that it missed a step, it'll basically just send a signal and it'll, hey, your motor stalled. And it has a variety of inputs for those. Most of those I have not compiled into the firmware because they're not applicable for the motors that we have. But also, I mean, you can set things up to start your spindle automatically. I think I have on that sheet that there is a spindle enable that will drive low off of pin PD12, which is because it's a 3D printer board, it's one of the heater boards, heater pins. But that will send low and you can use that to start up your spindle if you have an appropriate adapter to do that. Let's see. Anything else?
Hey, Paul, where do you get your bits from?
I have been getting them from Online Carbide almost exclusively.
Yeah,
Um,
I got a set from them too, and they are extremely sharp.
yeah, they're sharp. You know, honestly, I haven't ordered any in quite a long time because I'm still using the same ones over and over again. I haven't had the need to replace them yet.
Any
Occasionally
issue with them bending at all?
bending the bits?
Yeah.
No, no, I've had no issues. I have broken two bits, I think, and that's always been a case where I accidentally had set things to move like 90 millimeters or 60 millimeters, and I just plowed into a piece when I was trying to jog. And that's
Yeah.
the only time I've snapped bits. I don't think I've ever snapped a bit while I was actually running an operation.
Ditto. Did the exact what you just said.
Yeah.
And you call it online carbide?
Yeah. And they have quite a selection of stuff. I mean, I think most people are still using like this router or something similar with the ER11 collet. So the maximum you can go up to, well, I don't know what the maximum, you might be able to go up to like 7 millimeter, but really you can only get up to effectively quarter inch. So for the shaft. So I'm always all the tools that I'm really using up to this point, with the exception, well, it's still a quarter inch shaft, but the slot cutter for threading is the only one that's larger. And so I think I've showed this before, but that's what I'm using for cutting threads. And I basically just always make square threads now.
Does that come from online carbide as well?
This did not. This is a Yonico. I think this probably came from Amazon. But this is, just a generic, it's a 16th inch slot cutter. You could get it from anywhere.
I'm hoping to find one down at the show in June.
I know I'm
And,
looking for a trapezoidal cutter like the slot cutter. I've not found it.
mm, yeah, interesting.
I use a 90-degree V-bit for threading,
90-degree V bit.
double angle 90-degree bit,
Yeah.
and do 12.5 threads per inch.
Yeah, that would be doable.
I mean, I even went looking for inverted dovetail, and no, wasn't finding it.
Hmm.
And do a search on double angle.
Yeah, you can get
Okay.
a double angle 60-degree bit on Amazon.
Yeah, I'll check that out. Thank you.
There's one that's, I think, 1/8 inch shaft, quite small, and it will get close in to your shoulders.
Hmm.
The one I'm using is 4 millimeter.
You said 4 millimeter?
Yeah, 4 millimeter diameter. But if you get larger ones, then you can grind off the end to so you can work closer to the shoulder.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's still a inline, like a router bit, though, right? How would you do the interior threads?
Same way. It's a double angle bit. It's not a straight bit. It's like a slot cutter, only instead of like Paul showing a square, it's got 90 degree.
Okay, that's exactly what I was looking for, like a slot cutter for doing that, but didn't come across it.
Look for a double angle 60-degree router bit on Amazon. You'll find it.
Or if you're real industrious, you can buy thread mills, single flute thread mills.
Yeah, well, if you're industrious and you have a lot of money, right? Because
Well, yeah, it costs $5.
well, but as you go up in size for those thread mills, they get more and more expensive.
They
Um,
certainly can, yes.
I was trying to like maximize the TPI range that I could use with the thread mills, and also the shaft sizes that you can get for the lower thread count are always larger, right? So I was using an adapter and trying to use, and it was just too much run out when I was messing with that.
I'm just looking at carbide, online carbide for a thread mill, and they're $38.
Yeah.
AliExpress is considerably cheaper.
Whose prices?
Pardon? AliExpress?
AliExpress.
You know what? So I'm still back in the PWA stage. I haven't cut anything in a month here. Well, and I had just bought some cheap carbide cutters from AliExpress, and that's why I asked the question about them being crooked or not, because I think I got one that was either crooked to start with, or I made it crooked somehow because the PWAs just didn't turn out. The inserts were way smaller than the hole, and when I looked at it, it was because there was some run out on the cutter.
Hmm.
Ooh,
Another place to get the router bits is IDC Woodcraft. They specialize in CNC bits.
Good to know. I haven't checked them out before. I'll take a look at it.
Jeff Kits has long sold a 60-degree double angle cutter for doing boxes and things like that. And I think it's about $49 American.
I just
Who was
threw
that
a
again, Jeff?
picture in the chat. Is this what you guys were talking about?
It is, but that one's way too large for threading. Unless you grind off the end.
Okay. And so just basically flatten off the edge of it then, or the tip of it.
Yeah.
Good idea. Thank you.
All right. Well, one of the things that I had talked about, let's see if I can figure out how to get here, was doing lathe operations in Kirimoto. So I know Dale was interested in doing this. And other people might end up being interested in doing this. I'll switch the models here out. So if you want to do things where you're actually doing rotational, sort of CNC lathe operations with the fourth axis in the LatheEngraver. One of the things you have to do is, and you, of course, the stupid button's over this and you can't see it, and I can't move it far enough, is that you have to turn indexed mode on. So if you've set this up for using with the LatheEngraver, or you've set this up for working in CNC mode, you'll have it indexed. So stock is mounted to a rotary indexer. So that's the first thing that you have to turn on. The other thing that's useful for turning on here is if you go to Setup and Preferences, turning on this web GPU. And as we sort of talked about at the start, Dale's having trouble with his, and I've run into trouble with this before. The only thing that this allows you to do is it allows you to set a step down for how deep the bit's going to be going. And hopefully Stuart will be able to figure out what's going on with this. The other thing that I found I like to do is I like to turn on this code preview so that I don't have to download the G code and look at the whole thing. I can just look at the start of it and see what's happening to know if it's working the way that I'm expecting it to work. So first thing we do is we're going to import a file here. And the knight's a little more complicated, so I'll see if I can find the queen. So this is the chess piece here. And it starts off being vertical like this, but we're going to put this in index mode. But one of the things that I want to do is if I select this piece and I look at the scale of this, I want to know what the size is, particularly of X and Y here. So these are 30 millimeters. And this is becomes important for setting an offset off of the piece when you're going to start this. So we want to rotate this. So if I have the piece selected, I can go to this rotation and I can do a Y rotation in 90 degrees. And you'll notice that this sets it right in the middle if we're in indexed mode here. So that's what happens where it's setting the origin right at the center. So we know that the radius of this is 15 millimeters. And for whatever reason, that's one of the things you have to do here. The operation, once you go into indexed mode, you have the option of being able, you have this lathe operation. So you can click that on and you can set a variety of things. You can set the angle. And I'm hoping that I can get him to make some changes so that we don't have to write so much G code. So it's moving every 1 degree and then it's moving the cutter in and out at whatever every degree that it's measuring. Makes a lot more sense for lathe operations to do inverse time mode, and you can set it to, so you could say I want to do an RPM, I want it to go this fast, and I want it to be able to cut this much. You have the step over, so how much it's going to move over in the x-axis, and the step down is the maximum Z that it's going to go. And again, the step down requires that web GPU. You can do leave stock, and you can also have this either be in a linear mode, so the linear passes will move along X and then rotate 1 degree and then move along X again. And there might be cases where that's going to be better than doing in the non-linear mode, but so far everything that I've done has been in the non-linear mode. And now if we click preview here, it takes a while, and hopefully it won't crash, but usually when
And what mine does is crashes about halfway through. It
Yeah.
gets to the progress bar, gets to about the more info, and it just locks up.
Yeah, I've seen that. So now this is, you can see the tool paths here. So what it's it's rotating around this. I'm not sure what the preview or the animation looks like when you do this. I can't say that I've done it, but I'm actually worried that it'll crash if I do that. So I'm not going to I'm not going to do the animation right now.
Have
But
you used NC Viewer for animation?
I have not used that. No.
That's a good tool to use for animation.
Will it do the rotary as well?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And it's an online program.
Okay. NC Viewer. All right, that's good.
NC Viewer.
And so, this is basically just doing at a maximum 3 millimeter cut depth because I set that as the step down. And if I do the export here, this is where it'll show me a little bit of the G code. You'll notice that these first moves that it's making, it's moving back in Z a little bit, goes to X0, Y0, which doesn't matter for this. And now it's going to go down to, it moves to the one end, and then for Z, it's going to minus 15, essentially. So that's where I've got problems with, there's no way that I found that I can set the actual stock diameter to be the 0 point. So if I was doing this, and I plunged into several pieces before I realized that I was messing this up, would be that I would set my 0 point. So we'll go here. I'd set my 0 point on my piece of stock, and then I would move back that radial distance. So I'd move back 15, and then I would set that as 0. So it would make those initial moves in at 15. And so I found that was necessary. I've tried everything. I've tried changing the origin. You can't see that here. I've tried changing origin top, origin center. I've messed around with all of that. And from what I can find, it doesn't change it. So, but this would export the G code. Now there's the other problem. It just makes things really slow. If you look at when I export the G code here, you'll notice all of these Z movements I know, I realize it's kind of small. I can't make it larger on this, but all of these Z movements are for every single rotation of the A axis, there is a very slight difference in that Z. And what that does is the controller has to take that into account. And so there are accelerations and deaccelerations, even with these very, very small movements. So it moves very, very slowly when it does that. And so I wrote a little parser that basically says, you know, check to see what the difference is from the previous move. And if it's below some threshold, it's the same move. And you just keep that constant Z value, and you can actually set it to go at a reasonable pace as it's rotating around. That would be
I
less
have
of an issue
run,
if you were doing linear moves. Yeah, go ahead.
I think I have run, I've generated the G code without that web G, whatever. And I can feel the Z axis holding on to the motor. I can
Uh-huh.
feel it just tick every time.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's trying to accelerate and deaccelerate these very, very small motions, which really just
Oh,
don't need to be there.
yeah, although it should not move at all because you're rotating a circle.
That's right. Well, okay, so that's the issue is that they actually an STL file will never make a perfect circle. So it's faceted. You know, no,
Okay.
however many points you have. So that's why there are these slight differences in those Z values. And he just needs to put in a threshold value that says if it's below this amount, it's the same move. And so that you'll get a much better approximation of a circle as well when it's doing that.
Stuart has been replying to my comments on the forum, so I'm not sure what what his suggestion is now for my system, but I wouldn't be the only one that would have a problem. I have a new PC that I bought in November.
Yeah, and as we were talking about, I think you the best bet might be like what I'm doing here. I'm running the standalone program. So
I
it's
will
there's a
do
web
that.
interface that you can use, or you can download and run directly on the PC. It's basically just opening a web browser on your PC, but it's self-contained with all of the web stuff that's needed. And he's tested. So I think it'll work if you do that. I hope it'll work if you do that.
I'll give that a try.
Um, so there could be I don't plan on doing too much of that, but there could be interesting things that people do with doing these sort of lathe operations on it. I don't know. So anybody have any other questions about anything that
Anybody
If any,
aware of any breakout boards for our controller? Because I would almost like to just pull all the wires off and take them to screw terminals.
breakout board? There's nothing that exists that I know of. So you're talking with for like motors and stuff?
Basically all the like the buttons and the probe and whatnot. Instead of using those little connectors, I could actually
Yeah.
solder wires to those, bring them out to a screw terminal, and have a much more solid connection.
I have a breakout board. I'm using a Twincy 4.1 with a breakout board, and I had to solder on all the screw terminals on the breakout board.
So you basically made yours then.
Well, I bought the breakout board, but they send all of the pieces with it.
Gotcha.
With the instructions to solder the screw terminals on. I also had to solder the socket for the Twincy processor. If y'all are interested, I can show you what I've got.
Sure.
Let
If you
me
can,
let me stop the
it's
screen
right here
share.
next to my computer. So
It'll
I
take
got
me a
it
second to
running Monday. Monday's the first time I turned it on. And it's setting it here in my computer room now,
hold
my
on.
office. Haven't cut any wood yet. So if you can, Paul, if you can.
Yep, you're on.
Okay, I see Paul on the screen.
We see you.
You're probably
Oh, you see me?
See you.
Okay,
Yep.
There you
okay,
go.
We can see you.
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
spotlit you now, Dale. So
okay.
Ooh.
Here I've got all of the, this is the breakout board, the Twincy processor, and the motor drivers. To give you a little background, several years ago, a couple of years ago, I thought about building a home-built CNC router, and I decided to not do that project, so I had a lot of equipment. So this is built with a lot of miscellaneous equipment, stepper motors, drivers. The headstock here is the headstock from an older Rose engine lathe that I had built. So,
well, that's going to be nice and solid. That's more solid than the platform headstock.
it's pretty solid. That's 3/8 inch aluminum plate here that I also had, and I milled some of this. The rotation for the router uses the same bearing that you had in your on your system, I think, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And I have it set up right now that I can do I've got a pumping and a rocking set up. So I can't share the screen and you couldn't see it, but can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it going.
Yeah, we see it moving.
Okay. So
Is it the same controller board that we're using, or the?
Pardon?
Is it the same
I'm
controller?
using can't read it. It's a controller board for Quincy 4.1, and I generated the firmware with Gerbil Howell firmware generator.
There's a web builder, so if you have
Right.
other boards, you can.
And that's what I use to generate the firmware with.
Mm-hmm. How are you tensioning that A-axis? Does the A-axis motor tilt for tension?
The A-axis motor slides up and down.
Okay, slides up and down. And you have ball screws going there. That's nice.
Ball screws on both of these. The motor mount here has slots in it that slides back and forth. Tension this.
Nice.
Quite the machine.
And I do have an emergency stop.
Yeah, but where's your tailstock?
I don't have a tailstock and no place to put it.
I'm messing with you.
But
quite impressive.
This is where I'm at now, and I seem to have everything on the Rose engine part and the LatheEngraver working. I'm considering moving it to the shop next week and try to cut some wood.
Well, that's great.
So are you using Octoprint and Paul's plugins?
Oh, yeah. I'm using all of Paul's.
Well, but just all your own hardware.
Octoprint, the LatheEngraver plug-in and the Rose engine. And this is running the Rose engine now. I just set it up beforehand so I could demonstrate it.
Yeah, that's great.
And now I think if I turn it off, if I stop it, then it'll all back up. Back to the zero position.
I think with the beefiness of your system there, and just looking at it, you could probably crank up the accelerations that you have. I don't know if you've messed with that at all.
Well, that's what I'm working on. I'm not sure how to do all of that yet.
Okay. Well, the nice thing with the lathe engraver, actually, I got to start sharing again to show you this. But the nice thing with the lathe engraver plugin is that most of these things are it actually will tell you what the settings do. So when you connect, if you go to lathe engraver support here and you scroll down, these are the things that you can change for the
Okay.
firmware. And so, for example, here you'd be looking at, I can't remember what the numbers are off the top of my head. So here we are in the 120s. So you can change x-axis acceleration, z-axis and you can change all these values. And so,
I've been I've been changing some of those
okay.
just with G code commands.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you can do it that way too, but this is just a way that make you can see what the actual what the parameter is as
Okay.
you're scrolling through if and you want to make changes.
Okay.
That's the main thing with this.
That big aluminum block looked more like a railway track. Pretty solid.
Pardon?
That your aluminum block there looked more like a piece of railway track.
Well, I had most of the aluminum, so
Pretty
I
solid.
It wasn't one
have
you
a
didn't
milling
forge this one
machine,
yourself.
so I drew the plans or made drawings for all the holes, and everything's drilled and tapped into here, drilled and tapped into here. So I did all that on my milling machine.
Is the headstock one of those that you melted down the tires or whatever?
Yes, the headstock used to be I think a Jeep aluminum car wheel, and I melted it down and poured it, and it was the Rose engine lathe. But I've just built a new Rose engine lathe with a new headstock. So this one was available. I just cut the bottom off at the right height for the router bit,
Nice.
and it works well. I can, if I want to, if I need to, I can move it and drill new holes in the aluminum plate.
That's great. Well, anybody else have anything else they'd like to share? If you
Well,
made
I
it,
just had a quick question.
yeah.
So, Jeff, are you in Barhead, Alberta?
Yes.
Cool. So I'm just outside of Calgary, and I know that Paul sold another one in Calgary. So, Paul, have you sold three in Canada now?
No, just two. Just
And
two.
I don't have one of Paul's machines, Keith.
Oh, I
I'm
see.
I'm odd. I built an attachment for my one of my CNC machines. So I built a couple of bases that'll accommodate Paul's rotary axis, although I have a different rotary axis for that one that's more hardware, much more rigid.
I see.
And
So you're another custom built one.
well, I'm coming from the world of Bill Oombs's um, Rose Engine software, so I can do anything from Bill's software. I can do anything from that.
I
Uh,
see.
Dale was talking about his control boards. My machines have about 3 control boards each.
I've been thinking, I have your Bill Ohm's program running, and I was thinking about seeing what I could do with it as well.
Well, Paul has made it possible to take the G code from Bill's program and just run it under LatheEngraver if you want to do it that way.
Yeah. You have to make one modification. You have to add I can't even remember what we added. I think you just put corn lathe at the top of the G code and it knows
Oh,
that it's a
okay.
corn lathe G code and it'll do all the conversions for you. You don't have to mess with anything else.
I've also used the Universal G code sender and G sender. and it works well with both of those.
Uh-huh. The one thing that you'll find is that any of the specialized things do require it to go through Octoprint. Like what I was showing before, like with that, start capture command and things like that. If you start using those, then those G-code senders don't have any idea what that means.
Right.
So that you have to use
Yes.
Octoprint for those cases.
So Jeff,
And
if
I can
you've
load
been in this
the
business,
G code into, let me see, G code templates. I can load a G code into G code templates and run it through Octoprint LatheEngraver.
G-code templates is specific. That is for converting 3-axis G-code into
Oh,
to
okay.
have rotary motions. But if you took corn lathe G-code, you could just upload it to Octoprint, edit the header of that to have corn lathe in it, and it'll convert because Bill's axes definitions, the spindle axis is C by default. And so it will actually convert everything. Every time it sees a C-axis command, it'll convert it to an A-axis command just by default. If you give it that corn lathe flag at the beginning.
See.
Keith, you
so
were
Jeff,
asking a question.
so we were talking about that online carbide as a source of cutting bits. So Jeff, do you use? I see there's a place here called Online Supply CA out on Vancouver Island. Is that a good place to get bits from?
I just order out of AliExpress in China, which is where most of that stuff comes from anyway. So if they're cheaper than the top of the line bits and I break one, I don't care.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like
Usually
I said
what they
earlier, I bought I think 5 of them from China, and there was some run out on them, so I kind of ruined some work.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do super fine work on, ebony or anything like that, although I could. And so I've used just a ton of bits. If you want a 60-degree cutter, like a V-bit cutter, get the one out of Lee Valley that's 3 flute. That gives you a very nice cut. But it's, I'm doing I'm doing so many weird things that I can't keep up with myself half the time.
Do you belong to the Edmonton Woodturners Guild or anything?
Yep. Yeah. So I did a presentation for them quite a number of years ago on vacuum kilns and how to run those. And I occasionally put up a video on a YouTube channel I have called Embellished Turnings.
And I actually had been communicating with Jeff like from the start of the LatheEngraver project because we were both using Grew software to do a lot of our stuff.
Oh,
Yeah, and Grew, I'm still using that quite a bit for quite a number of things. I'm not what do they call it? Like a dedicated brand person. I use whatever club is in the bag, just like golf. So Grew, I've got to know the author pretty well, and now that I think he's mostly out of foam cutter hell, which he's been in for most of the last year, um, he'll probably be a little more responsive to some of the changes I make.
He also has the lathe version, which it's not the automated lathe. I mean, it's intended as you're moving basically X and Z, right? Uh, and the spindle is running continuously, basically. So it doesn't have spindle control the way that Kirimoto does for this. But that was one of the things that I think. I don't know if you know if there's been any changes to that because when I looked at it, it was basically I like the interface and the way that you basically can take a profile and you can say, okay, I want to cut this profile with this step down and all this, but you lack the ability to put the A-axis movements in there?
It depends.
Oh, okay.
I was actually doing that on a 6-axis card, and I was just running Bill Looms' software with a C-axis instead of A. I was running that directly. It doesn't matter to me. I usually just do a text edit. If I don't have a C-axis or A-axis in the G code, I just do a text edit and put it in there. It's not a problem. But Bill's software with the inverse time code, G code that he generates, that's just really slick. But your software I can run on my CNC. I built a vertical mount tool based on your big pulley. So the stepper motor is way up high, and then the pulley is down where I need it. So I can stick a laser on that, or I can stick a little 800-watt DC cutter on there, and that works well. The only thing I wasn't able to do was a globe. I couldn't put Antarctica on properly with a laser because it had to lay down almost horizontally, and I would crash the laser into the axis of rotation.
But the globe got done in the end?
No, I said to the guy, you know what, I can't. He wanted one that was really quite accurate. And I was pretty close, but when you start running into hardware crashes, I said to him, no, not doing that. I have a globe that could work, but I don't want to crash my machine trying to make it. And that was just a little 6-inch globe he wanted to make them out of, and he wanted it really accurate. Okay, well, you know, can't do that.
Well, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but the one other thing that I would like to do, and this is like a long way off yet, is actually convert the LatheEngraver. So have a plugin to do vinyl cutting to make vinyl records. So at some point I'll do that. I have to make the adapter head so with the to run off the amplifier to move the cutter, but at some point.
All right, Paul, since you're so good with the bath, I expect to be able to cut vinyl templates out that curve around the round pieces we make on the lathe without folds in it.
Well, I don't know about that. I wouldn't say that I'm good at the math, but
You're
I just
very good at it.
when I have to figure something out, that's when I have to do it. So
That's always the thing I run into trouble with when I try to do any airbrush and taking a template and putting around a curved area. It just, of course, it obviously doesn't fit.
right. Well, there's that guy up in Seattle area who he had an article in the AW magazine, and he's on the forum. He's got some software, I think. I can't remember his name now. But he's got something that I think is intended for taking templates to be able to wrap them onto surfaces when you're embellishing. Am I just making that up and I just thought that was the case? Maybe. I don't know.
Now I'll do a search of the AEW articles to see if I can find something.
I can't remember what the name of the software is, but it's a website that you can plop things into basically, and it'll do designs. I was thinking that it might be nice for, when you're making a design as well, because it'll output to SVG. So then you could use the SVG for. I'll look for it and put it on the Discord if I find it. Anything else? Anybody else have stuff or things?
Paul, thank you again for doing these. Really appreciate them.
Yeah, I
Well,
hope
thank
I
you,
hope
Paul.
Yes.
some useful stuff there. And of course, if you have any questions about anything, let me know. And I didn't solicit. I had planned on doing that, but I'm going to do more tutorial videos, so, step by step kind of things once I get a little bit more time. So hopefully that'll be useful. Keith, if you're having issues with those PEWAs, let me know and we can see what's happening with that. So,
Well, like I said, I think it's just the run out on the bit.
okay.
So no, I just got frustrated. Haven't done anything with it for a month.
Yeah.
My fault.
All right. Well,
Paul,
thanks everybody. Yeah.
Thanks,
Paul,
Paul.
are you gonna post drawings for the tailstock?
Yes, I will do some drawings for the tailstock. I'll see if I can
Thank
find
you.
a CAD model for it so I can make them nice. If I can, I'll do that. If not, then well, maybe I could just draw that in CAD anyway. Unless Ed beats me to it because he's a lot better at it than me.
Okay, the challenge is on. I'm looking forward to seeing them. Thank you.
All right, sounds good.
So,
Great to see
hey,
everybody
Paul,
again, and I'll let you know about May when my time will be more free. So,
when I was looking at some of that tailstock stuff, and Margaret, this might be helpful as well. You can get some of those whatever they call tailstock, I guess, with the extension on it, that had screw holes on them. If you get the right combination, you can get them that which should tap right into some of that 4080 seat channel.
yes, I looked at that. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the ones that I could get dimensions on that had the hole dimensions for their mount, um, none of them were at 20 millimeter increments. And whatever it was like 36 or
Uh,
something like
I
that.
thought I
So,
saw one there. So, Mark, it could be pretty easy just to put a couple pieces together. But, when I think about it, those tail stocks were more elaborate than the one that you showed that you have there.
hmm,
They were more like $100.
I see. Well, yeah, that might be the case. I was definitely going cheap here because I didn't know how it was going to work out. But as people come up with new ideas or new designs for that, let us know on the Discord, and then every month we can also share those ideas here. So,
Terrific. Thank you.
I'll look at it again next month, after mid-May.
all right, sounds good.
They have them on Babcat
You
model.
may be hearing from me next week, Paul, when I start cutting wood.
Okay, sounds good. You said GrabCAD?
Yeah,
Pardon?
Babcat have a model that look
Okay.
really close to the
All right, I'll pull one off. All right, great to see everybody. Take care. Have a great weekend.
Thank you
Thank
again.
you.